The words hit him like a bullet through glass. Victor Kane, the most feared man in Chicago's underworld, had built his empire on instinct and iron will. But when the trembling girl with haunted eyes leaned close at his own charity gala and whispered those 6 words, "Trust no one in this room," everything he thought he knew shattered. Because the girl shouldn't have been there at all, and the blood on her sleeve wasn't hers. If you're listening to this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what part of the world you're listening from. Victor Kane stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Grand Ballroom at the Drake Hotel, watching Chicago's elite move through the space like well-dressed predators. The October wind rattled the glass, carrying the smell of Lake Michigan and the promise of an early winter. Below, on East Walton Place, limousines lined the curb like a funeral procession, which Victor found grimly appropriate. Half the people in this room wanted him dead. He adjusted his Tom Ford cufflinks, platinum, understated, expensive, and took a measured sip of 18-year-old Macallan. The whiskey burned clean, the way he liked his business, the way he'd kept his business for 15 years, ever since he'd taken over the Kane family operations from his father and turned a street-level protection racket into a legitimate empire. Legitimate on paper, anyway. "Beautiful turnout, Mr. Kane." Councilman Reeves appeared at his elbow, all teeth and cologne. "Your foundation does remarkable work." Victor smiled the smile that never reached his eyes. "Children's hospitals don't fund themselves, Councilman." "They did, actually, when you owned half the construction contracts in Cook County and needed somewhere to wash the money. But Reeves knew that. Everyone in this room knew that. They just pretended otherwise, because pretending kept the machine running, and the machine made everyone rich." Across the ballroom, Victor's lieutenant Marco Santelli worked the crowd with practiced ease, his bulk somehow graceful in an Armani suit. Marco had been with him since the beginning, since the bloody summer of 2010, when they'd fought off the Volkov family's attempt to take the South Side. Brothers in everything but blood. Victor's gaze swept the room in the methodical pattern he'd learned from his father. Exits first, then faces, then hands. Always watch the hands. That's where the truth lived. That's where the guns were. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and false promises. Women in evening gowns that cost more than most people's cars. Men in tuxedos who'd signed death warrants with the same hands they now used to hold champagne flutes. The string quartet played Vivaldi, and the sound mixed with laughter that was too loud, too bright, too desperate. This was Victor's world. He'd built it brick by brick, body by body, compromise by compromise. And he was good at it. Better than good. He was the best. But lately, something had shifted. Small things. A shipment intercepted. A witness who should have stayed quiet. A federal prosecutor asking questions about accounts that should have been buried. Nothing concrete. Nothing he could point to. Just a feeling in his gut. The same feeling he'd had the night before his father was killed. Someone was talking. Someone close. Victor. His sister Elena materialized beside him, elegant in midnight blue silk. She was the legitimate face of the Kane Empire. Harvard law, corporate attorney, clean as fresh snow. She didn't know about the bodies, or she pretended not to. With Elena, it was hard to tell. "You look tense," she said quietly. "I'm always tense at these things. Too many people. Too many enemies, you mean." She touched his arm, and he saw the worry in her dark eyes. "Marco told me about the warehouse. About the missing shipment." Victor's jaw tightened. "Marco talked too much. It's handled." "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like your kingdom is starting to crack." Before he could answer, the ballroom doors opened, and a girl stumbled in. She was young, maybe 22, 23, with auburn hair that had come loose from whatever style it had been in. Her dress was wrong for the event, a simple black cocktail number that screamed, "department store," not designer. But it wasn't the dress that made Victor's instincts flare. It was her eyes. They were the eyes of someone who'd seen death up close. She moved through the crowd like a ghost, and nobody seemed to notice her. Nobody except Victor. He watched as she navigated between clusters of conversation, her movements jerky, purposeful. She was looking for something. Someone. She was looking for him. Their eyes met across the ballroom, and Victor saw her decision crystallize. She changed direction, moving faster now, and he saw the dark stain on her left sleeve. Blood. Fresh enough to still be wet. Marco noticed her at the same time Victor did. His lieutenant's hand moved toward his jacket, where Victor knew he kept a Glock 19. But Victor raised one finger. "Wait." The girl reached him, and up close, he could see she was shaking. Not from cold, from terror. "Mr. Kane," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the Vivaldi. "I need to tell you something. Who are you? That doesn't matter. What matters is—" She glanced around, and Victor saw the panic in her eyes deepen. "What matters is that you're in danger. Right now. Tonight." Victor had heard threats before. Had heard warnings, pleas, promises. He'd learned to read the difference between desperation and deception. This girl was desperate. "Tell me," he said quietly. She leaned closer, and he could smell her fear, sharp and acrid beneath cheap perfume. Her next words came out in a rush, barely more than a breath. "Trust no one in this room." The world seemed to stop. The music continued, the laughter continued, but Victor's focus narrowed to the girl's face, to the truth he saw there. "Who sent you?" "Nobody sent me. I came because—" Her voice broke. "Because they're going to kill you. Tonight. Someone here. Someone you trust." Victor's mind raced through possibilities, through the careful architecture of loyalty and fear he'd built over 15 years. Marco. Elena. His accountant, his lawyer, his drivers, the councilmen he owned, the cops on his payroll, the judges who owed him favors. Trust no one in this room. Why should I believe you? The girl's hand moved to her sleeve, to the blood there, and Victor saw her fingers tremble. Because I was there when they planned it. Because I heard everything. And because— Her eyes filled with tears. Because they killed my sister when she tried to warn you. The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Victor felt something shift in his chest, some old instinct his father had taught him. When someone bleeds for you, you listen. "Marco," he said quietly, not taking his eyes off the girl. "Clear the room." But before Marco could move, before anyone could react, the lights went out. The ballroom plunged into darkness. And in that darkness, Victor heard 3 sounds that changed everything. A woman's scream, the distinctive crack of a suppressed gunshot, and the girl's voice, desperate and close. "Get down!" Victor's training took over. He dropped, pulling the girl with him, and felt the rush of air as something passed over his head. Another shot, closer this time. Someone was shooting at him in a room full of Chicago's elite, and they were using a suppressor, which meant they didn't care about being subtle. They cared about being sure. The emergency lights kicked in, bathing the ballroom in red. Victor saw Marco moving toward him, saw Elena frozen by the windows, saw the crowd beginning to panic, and he saw something else. The girl was bleeding. Not from her sleeve. That was old blood. This was new, spreading across her side where a bullet had found her instead of him. She'd taken a shot meant for him. "Stay with me," Victor said, pressing his hand against the wound. The girl's eyes were unfocused, her breathing shallow. "Trust no one," she whispered again. "Especially not—" But whatever she was going to say was lost, as the ballroom erupted into chaos. People were screaming, running for the exits. Security was shouting, and somewhere in the red-lit darkness, a killer was reloading. Victor looked up and met Marco's eyes across the room. His oldest friend, his most trusted lieutenant, the man who'd saved his life a dozen times. Marco's hand was inside his jacket, and Victor realized, with the cold certainty that had kept him alive this long, that everything was about to change. The empire he'd built, the trust he'd placed, the world he'd known, all of it was balanced on the edge of a knife. The girl had come to warn him. She'd taken a bullet for him, and now she was dying in his arms while somewhere in this room, someone he trusted was trying to finish the job. Victor Kane had built his empire on knowing who to trust and who to kill. But as the emergency lights painted everything the color of blood, he realized he'd been wrong about everything, and the night was just beginning. Victor's penthouse on the 40th floor of the Legacy Tower had been designed for 2 things, luxury and survival. Floor-to-ceiling bulletproof glass overlooked the Chicago skyline, but the walls were reinforced concrete. The furniture was Italian leather and Brazilian hardwood, but the panic room behind the bookshelf could withstand a siege. It was a fortress disguised as a palace, and right now, Victor needed the fortress. The girl, her name was Lily Brennan, he'd learned from the ID in her purse, lay on his dining room table while his personal doctor worked to save her life. Dr. Chen didn't ask questions. That was why Victor paid him $250,000 a year in cash. "The bullet went through," Chen said, his hand steady as he sutured. "Missed the vital organs." She's lucky. Lucky. Victor watched the girl's pale face and thought about the word. She'd walked into a room full of killers to warn a man she'd never met, and she'd taken a bullet for her trouble. That wasn't luck. That was something else. Something Victor didn't have a name for. Marco stood by the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. He hadn't said much since they'd left the Drake, since Victor had bundled Lily into his car and told Marco to handle the police. The silence between them was new, and it felt like broken glass. "We need to talk," Victor said. Marco turned, and in the dim light of the penthouse, Victor studied the face he knew as well as his own. Square jaw, broken nose from a fight in 2012, scar above his left eyebrow from the Volkov War, 15 years of loyalty written in scar tissue and shared secrets. "About what happened," Marco said carefully. "About what almost happened." "Victor, I don't know what you think you saw. I saw you reaching for your gun. Because someone was shooting at you." Marco's voice rose, frustration bleeding through. "What did you expect me to do?" It was a reasonable answer. It was the answer Victor wanted to believe. But the girl's words kept echoing in his head. Trust no one in this room. Especially not who? Who had she been about to name? "Tell me about the warehouse," Victor said. "The missing shipment." Marco's expression shifted, became guarded. "What about it? You said it was handled. How?" "The usual way. We found the leak, we plugged it." "Who was the leak?" A pause. Too long. "Tommy Rizzo, one of the dock workers." "And where's Tommy now?" "Bottom of the lake." Marco met his eyes. "Where he belongs." Victor had known Tommy Rizzo, a kid from Bridgeport with a gambling problem and a sick mother. Not the type to betray the family. Not unless someone had given him a very good reason. "Who gave the order?" "I did." Marco's voice was flat. "That's my job, Victor. You handle the big picture, I handle the details. That's how it's always been." It was true. For 15 years, Marco had been his right hand, his enforcer, his problem solver. Victor had trusted him with everything. The money, the operations, the bodies. And now a girl with blood on her sleeve was telling him that trust was a lie. "I want to see the body," Victor said. "What?" "Tommy Rizzo. I want to see the body." Marco's jaw tightened. "It's been 3 weeks, Victor. There's nothing to see." "Then show me the photos. Show me the proof." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Outside, Chicago glittered in the November darkness, a million lights hiding a million sins. Victor had built his empire in those shadows, and now the shadows were closing in. "You don't trust me," Marco said finally. "I don't trust anyone. Not anymore." Because of what some random girl said. Some girl who shows up out of nowhere with a crazy story. "She took a bullet for me." Or she's part of the setup. Marco's control was slipping now, anger bleeding through. "Think about it, Victor. She shows up, causes chaos, gets shot, and now you're questioning everyone around you. Classic misdirection. While you're looking at me, the real threat is somewhere else." It was possible. It was even probable. But Victor's instincts, the same instincts that had kept him alive through gang wars and federal investigations, were screaming that something was wrong, that the foundation he'd built was rotten. "I need to talk to her," Victor said. "When she wakes up, I need to know everything. And if she's lying, then I'll know that too." Dr. Chen finished his work and stepped back, stripping off his gloves. "She'll live, but she needs rest, and she'll need to stay somewhere safe for a few days." "She'll stay here," Victor said. Marco's expression darkened. "That's not smart, Victor. We don't know who she is, what she wants. She saved my life, maybe. Or maybe she's the bait in a trap you're walking right into." Victor looked at the girl on his table, at the bandages wrapped around her torso, at the pale face that looked younger in unconsciousness. She'd walked into his world knowing what it would cost, knowing she might die, and she'd done it anyway. "Why?" "Everyone out," Victor said quietly. "I need to think." Dr. Chen packed his bag and left without a word. Marco hesitated, and Victor saw something flicker across his face. Hurt, maybe. Or anger. Or fear. 15 years, Marco said. 15 years I've had your back. And now you're choosing some stranger over me. I'm not choosing anyone. I'm trying to stay alive, by pushing away the people who've kept you alive all this time. Marco moved toward the door, then stopped. "You want to know what I think? I think you're scared. I think someone finally got close enough to make you bleed, and now you're seeing enemies everywhere, even in the people who love you." The word hung in the air. Love. It wasn't a word they used. Not in their world. Love was weakness. Love was leverage. Love got you killed. But it was also the only thing that made any of this bearable. "I'll call you tomorrow," Victor said. Marco left without another word, and Victor was alone with the girl and his doubts. He poured himself another Macallan and stood at the window, watching the city breathe. Somewhere out there, someone was planning his death. Someone who knew his routines, his security, his weaknesses. Someone close enough to get a shooter into the Drake Hotel with a suppressed weapon and a clear line of sight. Trust no one in this room. Victor thought about the people who'd been at the gala. Elena, his sister, who'd been pushing him to legitimize the business, to step away from the violence. Marco, his brother in everything but blood, who'd been acting strange for weeks. Councilman Reeves, who owed him favors, but might owe someone else more. His lawyer, his accountant, his drivers, his guards. How many of them would he have to kill to feel safe again? Behind him, Lily Brennan stirred. Victor turned and watched as her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. She tried to sit up, gasped in pain, and fell back. "Don't move," Victor said, crossing to her. "You've been shot." Her eyes found his face, and he saw the moment memory returned. Fear flooded her expression, followed by something harder. Determination. "You're alive," she whispered. "Thanks to you. Did they get away? The shooter?" "I don't know. The police are investigating." Victor pulled up a chair and sat beside her. "But right now, I need you to tell me everything, starting with who you are and why you came to warn me." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. "My sister was Claire Brennan. She worked at your club on Rush Street, the Velvet Room." Victor knew the place, one of his legitimate businesses, a high-end nightclub that catered to the city's elite. Good cover for meetings, good money, and clean enough that the feds couldn't touch it. "I don't know your sister. You wouldn't. She was just a bartender. But she saw things, heard things." Lily's voice was getting stronger now, anger burning through the pain. She heard two men talking in one of the private rooms. About you. About killing you. Who were they? She didn't know their names, but she knew they were part of your organization. She knew they were planning something for the charity gala. Lily's hand found his, her grip surprisingly strong. "She tried to warn you. She called your office, tried to get a meeting, but someone intercepted her. Someone found out what she knew." Victor's blood ran cold. "What happened to her?" "They made it look like an accident. A hit and run on Ashland Avenue 3 days ago. But I saw the body, Mr. Kane. I saw what they did to her before they killed her." The tears came now, hot and angry. "They tortured her, made sure she hadn't told anyone else, and then they ran her down like a dog." Victor thought about the past 3 days, about the business that had continued as usual while a girl was murdered for trying to save his life. He thought about the reports that crossed his desk, the routine violence that was just part of the cost of doing business. How many Claire Brennans had there been? How many people had died in the shadows of his empire while he counted money and made deals? "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it. Sorry doesn't bring her back. Lily's eyes burned into his. "But you can help me find who killed her. You can help me make them pay. This isn't your world. You should go home, disappear, forget any of this happened. I can't forget, and I can't disappear, because whoever killed Claire knows I exist. They'll come for me next." She squeezed his hand harder. "Please, you're the only one who can help me, the only one who might actually care." Victor looked at this girl who'd walked into hell to save a stranger, who'd taken a bullet and was now asking him to help her hunt killers. She was brave, or crazy, or both, and she was right about one thing. They would come for her. They'd come for anyone who knew the truth. "Tell me everything you remember," Victor said. "Every detail about what your sister told you. Every word." Lily closed her eyes, and Victor watched her face as she pulled up the memories. She said there were 2 men. One had a Russian accent, the other was American, someone high up in your organization. She said they were planning to kill you at the gala, make it look like a rival family, start a war that would tear your empire apart. Russian accent. Victor's mind raced. The Volkov family had been quiet since 2010, but quiet didn't mean gone. And if someone in his organization was working with them, did she say anything else? Any names, any details? She said. Lily's eyes opened, and Victor saw the fear there. She said the American called the Russian brother, like they were family. The word hit Victor like a physical blow. Brother. In their world, that word meant something. It meant blood or bond, loyalty that went deeper than money or fear. Marco had called him brother 1,000 times, but so had others. Victor had built his empire on chosen family, on men who'd proven themselves in blood and fire. Any of them could be the traitor. All of them could be. "There's something else," Lily said. "Something Claire found. She hid it before they killed her. She told me where, made me promise to get it if anything happened to her." "What is it?" "I don't know. But she said it was proof, evidence of everything." Lily tried to sit up again, and this time Victor helped her. "It's in a storage unit in Pilsen, Unit 247 at the secure store on 18th Street. I have the key." Victor's mind was already working, planning. If there was evidence, if there was proof of who was betraying him, he needed it. But going after it would expose Lily, would put her in more danger. "I'll send someone." "No." Lily's voice was sharp. "No one else. Claire died because she trusted the wrong person. I'm not making that mistake." She met his eyes, and Victor saw steel beneath the fear. "We go together, or I go alone. You can barely stand. Then I'll crawl." She swung her legs off the table, gasped in pain, but didn't stop. "My sister died for this. I'm not letting anyone else touch it." Victor watched her struggle to her feet, watched her face go white with pain, but her jaw set with determination. She was going to get herself killed, and somehow, that made him respect her more. "Tomorrow," he said. "We'll go tomorrow. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow someone might get to it first." "Tomorrow," Victor repeated, his voice harder now, "because tonight you can barely walk. And if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right." Lily stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, tomorrow. But I'm holding you to that." Victor helped her to the guest room, watched as she collapsed onto the bed with a groan. "There's a gun in the nightstand," he said, "and a panic button by the bed. Press it if you need me. You're staying here? Someone tried to kill me tonight. Until I know who, I'm not going anywhere." He paused in the doorway. "Your sister was brave, coming to warn me. She didn't have to do that. She was a good person." Lily's voice was thick with grief. She believed people could change, that even someone like you could do the right thing. Someone like me, a killer, a criminal, a man who built an empire on blood. Lily's eyes found his in the darkness. "But she also said you had rules, that you protected your people, that you weren't like the others." Victor thought about the rules he'd made, the lines he'd drawn. No kids, no civilians, no unnecessary violence. Rules that were supposed to make him better than the monsters he'd fought. But Claire Brennan had been a civilian, and she'd died anyway. Died because she'd tried to help him. "Your sister was wrong," Victor said quietly. "I'm exactly like the others. I just hide it better." He closed the door and walked back to the windows, to the view of the city he'd conquered. Somewhere out there, a traitor was planning his next move. Somewhere out there, Claire Brennan's killers were celebrating. And somewhere in the shadows of his empire, the truth was waiting. Victor poured another drink and watched the rain begin to fall, streaking the bulletproof glass like tears. The city looked different now, less like a kingdom and more like a cage. And for the first time in 15 years, Victor Kane wasn't sure he was the predator anymore. Maybe he'd been the prey all along. The secure store facility on 18th Street in Pilsen looked like every other self-storage place in Chicago. Chain-link fence, orange doors, security cameras that may or may not have been working. Victor had chosen it specifically because it was unremarkable. The kind of place where people stored furniture and forgotten memories, not evidence of conspiracy and murder. He pulled his Audi into the lot at 6 a.m, when the November sun was just beginning to burn through the fog rolling off the Chicago River. Lily sat beside him, pale but determined, her hand pressed against the bandages under her jacket. "You should have stayed at the penthouse," Victor said. "We've been over this." They had, for the past hour, while Victor had tried every argument he could think of to keep her safe. But Lily Brennan had her sister's stubbornness, and she'd made it clear. She was going in, with or without him. Victor respected that, even as it terrified him. They'd left the penthouse before dawn, using the service elevator and the underground garage. Victor had checked for tails 3 times, taken a route that doubled back on itself twice, and still his instincts were screaming that something was wrong. The feeling had been growing since last night, since Marco had left with hurt in his eyes, and questions Victor couldn't answer. Trust no one in this room. The storage facility was quiet, just a few early morning customers loading boxes into trucks. Victor and Lily moved quickly, keeping their heads down. Unit 247 was on the 2nd floor. tucked in a corner where the security cameras had a blind spot. Claire Brennan had been smart. Smarter than anyone had given her credit for. Lily's hands shook as she fitted the key into the lock. The door rolled up with a metallic screech that seemed too loud in the morning quiet. Inside, the unit was small and dark, filled with the musty smell of cardboard and dust. And in the center, sitting on top of a stack of boxes, was a laptop. "That's it," Lily whispered. "That's what she wanted us to find." Victor pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight, sweeping it across the unit. Just the laptop and boxes. Nothing else. No trap, no ambush. But his instincts were still screaming. "Grab it and let's go," he said. Lily moved forward, reaching for the laptop, and that's when Victor saw it. A thin wire running from the laptop to the boxes beneath, a wire that shouldn't have been there. "Stop!" He grabbed Lily and pulled her back, hard enough that she cried out in pain. "Don't touch it." "What?" "It's wired." Victor's mind raced. Someone knew we were coming. Someone got here first. He pulled Lily toward the door, but before they could move, a voice echoed through the storage facility. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out." Victor spun, his hand going for the Glock at his back, and found himself facing the last person he'd expected to see. Elena. His sister stood at the entrance to the unit, and she wasn't alone. Behind her, 3 men with guns. Professional, military bearing, not the usual street muscle. "Elena?" Victor's voice was steady, but his world was tilting. "What are you doing here?" "What I should have done years ago." Elena's face was calm, almost sad. "Ending this, ending you." The words didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. Elena was his sister, his blood, the one person in his life who was supposed to be clean, the one person he'd protected from the darkness of what he did. "I don't understand." "Of course you don't." Elena stepped into the unit, and Victor saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Hatred. Cold and deep and absolute. "You never understood. You were too busy playing king to see what you'd become." "Elena, whatever this is justice, Victor. This is 15 years of watching you destroy everything our father built. 15 years of watching you turn the Kane name into a joke. A cautionary tale about what happens when you let ambition override honor." Victor's mind was reeling. Father was a criminal, just like me. Father was a businessman who understood limits, who understood that power without principle is just tyranny. Elena's voice was rising now, emotion bleeding through. "But you turned us into monsters. You made deals with the Russians, with the cartels, with anyone who could make you richer. You forgot where we came from. You forgot what we stood for, what we stood for." Victor's own anger was building now. We stood for survival, for taking what the world wouldn't give us. That's what Father taught me. Father taught you to be strong. I'm teaching you to be dead. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Victor looked at his sister, at the woman who'd been his anchor, his conscience, his connection to something better than the life he'd chosen. And he realized he'd never known her at all. "The Russians," he said slowly. "You're working with the Volkovs. I'm working with people who understand that Chicago needs order. Real order, not your version of it." Elena's smile was bitter. "Dmitry Volkov and I have been planning this for 2 years. Ever since you killed his brother and thought you'd won the war." Dmitry Volkov. Victor remembered him. Alexei Volkov's younger brother. The one who'd disappeared after the 2010 war. The one everyone assumed had fled back to Moscow. But he hadn't fled. He'd been here in Chicago, planning revenge, and Elena had been helping him. Why? The question came out raw. Why betray your own family? Because you're not my family anymore. You're a cancer, Victor, and the only way to save what's left of the Kane name is to cut you out. Elena nodded to the men behind her. The laptop is rigged with enough C4 to bring down this whole building. Claire Brennan was thorough. She had evidence of everything. Your deals, your murders, your corruption, all of it. And when it explodes, it'll take you with it. A tragic accident. The great Victor Kane, killed by his own paranoia. Victor's hand was still on his Glock, but the angles were wrong. 3 guns against 1, and Lily was in the line of fire. If he drew, they'd both die. He needed time, needed to think. "Claire Brennan," he said, "you killed her. Dimitri's men killed her, after she made the mistake of trying to warn you." Elena's eyes flicked to Lily, and her sister made the same mistake. Coming to the gala, causing a scene. We had to improvise. The shot was meant for you, but she got in the way. You were there. Victor's voice was flat. At the Drake. You were part of it. I've been part of it from the beginning. Every move you've made, every decision. I've been feeding information to Dimitri, helping him stay ahead of you, helping him build the case that will destroy everything you've built. Victor thought about the past 2 years, about the small failures that had seemed like bad luck, the intercepted shipments, the witnesses who'd talked, the federal investigation that kept getting closer, all of it orchestrated by his own sister. Marco, he said suddenly. Does he know? Elena's expression flickered. Marco is loyal to you. Stupidly, blindly loyal. He's been the hardest part of this. We've tried to turn him, tried to make him see reason, but he won't listen, so he'll die with you. And then what? You and Dimitri take over? Run Chicago together? Dimitri will run the streets. I'll run the legitimate businesses. We'll clean up your mess, restore order, and make the Kane name mean something again. Elena's voice was almost gentle now. It's not personal, Victor. It's just business. The same thing you've been saying for 15 years. Victor looked at his sister and saw a stranger, saw someone who'd learned his lessons too well, who'd watched him build an empire on betrayal, and decided to use the same tools against him. You're wrong about one thing, he said quietly. What's that? It's always personal. Victor moved. Not for his gun. That would get them both killed. Instead, he grabbed Lily and threw himself backward, out of the storage unit, as Elena shouted and the men opened fire. Bullets tore through the air where they'd been standing, sparking off metal doors. Victor hit the ground hard, rolled, came up with his Glock drawn. He fired twice, not to kill, but to create chaos, to buy seconds. Run! He shouted to Lily, and she did, stumbling toward the stairs while Victor laid down covering fire. One of Elena's men went down, clutching his shoulder. The other 2 advanced, professional and calm. Victor fired again, then turned and ran, following Lily down the stairs as bullets chewed up the concrete behind them. They burst out into the parking lot, and Victor saw his Audi 50 feet away. Too far. They'd never make it. There! Lily pointed to a delivery truck idling by the entrance, the driver inside checking his phone. Victor didn't hesitate. He ran to the truck, yanked open the door, and pulled the driver out. The man shouted, started to fight, and Victor hit him once, hard enough to drop him. Get in, he shouted to Lily. She scrambled into the passenger seat, and Victor threw the truck into gear. Behind them, Elena and her men were emerging from the building. Victor saw his sister's face, saw the cold fury there, and then he was accelerating out of the lot, tires screaming. They're following us, Lily shouted. Victor checked the mirror and saw a black SUV pulling out behind them. Professional, organized, not giving up. He took a hard right onto 18th Street, the truck's suspension groaning. The SUV stayed with them, closing the distance. Victor saw a gun barrel emerge from the passenger window. Get down! The rear window exploded as bullets tore through it. Victor swerved, took another turn, and found himself heading east toward the lake. The morning traffic was picking up, and he used it, weaving between cars, running red lights, doing everything he could to lose the SUV. But they were good, better than good. They stayed with him through every turn, every maneuver. We need to get off the street, Lily said, her voice surprisingly calm. They're going to kill us. She was right. Victor's mind raced through options. He couldn't go back to the penthouse. They'd be waiting. Couldn't go to any of his properties. Elena knew them all. Couldn't trust anyone in his organization. Not until he knew how deep the betrayal went. Trust no one in this room. I know a place, he said. Hold on. He took a hard left onto Lakeshore Drive, accelerating into the northbound traffic. The SUV followed, and Victor saw more guns emerging. They were going to try to end this here, in broad daylight, with witnesses. They were desperate, which meant he was winning, or it meant they didn't care about being seen anymore, which meant he was already dead. Victor pushed the thought away and focused on driving. He had one advantage. He knew Chicago better than anyone. Every street, every alley, every escape route. He'd spent 15 years learning the city's secrets, and now those secrets might save his life. He took the exit at Fullerton, cut through Lincoln Park, and headed west. The SUV stayed with them, but Victor was pulling ahead now, using the truck's size to bully through traffic. Where are we going? Lily asked. Somewhere they won't follow. Where's that? Victor didn't answer. He was too busy watching the road, watching the mirrors, watching for the moment when his luck would run out. It came at the intersection of Armitage and Halsted. The light was red, traffic was stopped, and the SUV was closing fast. Victor saw the guns, saw the men taking aim, and knew he had one choice. He accelerated. The truck smashed through the intersection, horns blaring, cars swerving. Victor heard the crunch of metal, felt the impact as they clipped a sedan, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Behind them, the SUV tried to follow, but the traffic had closed in, blocking their path. Victor saw them stuck, saw Elena's men shouting, and then he was around a corner and gone. He drove for another 10 minutes, taking random turns, doubling back, making sure they'd lost the tail. Finally, when he was sure they were clear, he pulled into an alley off Milwaukee Avenue and killed the engine. The silence was deafening. "Are you okay?" he asked Lily. She nodded, but her hands were shaking. "Your sister. She's the one who—" "Yeah." Victor's voice was hollow. "She's the one." He thought about Elena, about the little girl who'd followed him around when they were kids, who'd cried at their father's funeral, who'd hugged him when he'd taken over the family business and promised to keep her safe. He'd failed to see what she was becoming, failed to understand that his protection had felt like a prison, failed to realize that the person he trusted most in the world hated him enough to want him dead. "What do we do now?" Lily asked. Victor looked at her, at this girl who'd lost her sister and nearly died trying to save him, who was still here, still fighting, even though she had every reason to run. "Now," he said, "we figure out who else is with her, and then we burn it all down." But even as he said it, Victor felt something breaking inside him. The empire he'd built, the family he'd chosen, the trust he'd placed, all of it was ashes, and he was standing in the ruins, trying to figure out how to survive. The rain started again, drumming on the truck's roof like a funeral march, and Victor Kane, the most feared man in Chicago, sat in an alley with a wounded girl and wondered if his sister was right. Maybe he was the cancer. Maybe the only way to save anything was to cut himself out. But not yet. Not until he'd made them all pay for Claire Brennan, for Lily, for every lie and every betrayal. Not until he'd shown them that even a dying king could still roar. The safe house was in Bridgeport, tucked between a Polish bakery and a closed-down hardware store. Victor had bought it years ago under a shell company, one of a dozen properties Elena didn't know about. Or at least, he hoped she didn't know about. He couldn't be sure of anything anymore. Inside, the place was Spartan. A couch, a table, a kitchen, with a refrigerator that hummed too loud. But it had thick walls, a reinforced door, and no windows on the ground floor. It would do. Lily collapsed onto the couch the moment they were inside, her face gray with pain. The bandages under her jacket were spotted with fresh blood. She'd torn something in the escape, and Victor knew she needed medical attention. But Dr. Chen was compromised. If Elena knew about him, and she probably did, then calling him would be suicide. "Let me see," Victor said, kneeling beside the couch. Lily lifted her jacket, and Victor saw the damage. The stitches had pulled loose, and the wound was seeping. "Not life-threatening, not yet, but it would be if they didn't do something. I need to restitch this," he said. "You know how? I've done it before. On himself, mostly. And once on Marco, after a fight with the outfit that had nearly killed them both." Victor pushed the memory away. "It's going to hurt. Everything hurts." Lily's laugh was bitter. "What's a little more?" Victor found a first aid kit in the bathroom, along with a bottle of vodka that would have to serve as anesthetic and antiseptic. He poured a glass and handed it to Lily. "Drink." She did, grimacing at the taste. Victor cleaned the wound, threaded the needle, and began to work. Lily bit down on a towel and didn't scream, which impressed him more than he wanted to admit. "Your sister," she said through gritted teeth. "How long has she been planning this?" 2 years, apparently. Since I killed Alexei Volkov. Why didn't she just kill you then? Because she's smart. She wanted to destroy me completely. Not just kill me, but erase everything I'd built. Make it look like I'd brought it on myself. Victor tied off the last stitch and sat back. She learned from me. I taught her that the best revenge is the kind that looks like justice. Lily took another drink of vodka. "So what now? Everyone in your organization could be working for her. Everyone could be a traitor." "Not everyone." Victor stood and walked to the window, looking out at the gray Chicago morning. "Marco is loyal. She said so herself. And if Marco is loyal, then there are others. People who've been with me from the beginning. People who owe me their lives. Or people who are just better at hiding it." Victor thought about that. Thought about the 15 years he'd spent building trust, building loyalty, building something that felt like family, and he thought about how easily it had all been torn apart by the one person he'd never suspected. "I need to make a call," he said. "To who?" "Someone who owes me. Someone Elena doesn't know about." Victor pulled out a burner phone, one of 3 he kept for emergencies, and dialed a number he'd memorized years ago. It rang 4 times before a gravelly voice answered. "Yeah? It's Kane. I need a favor." A pause. "I heard you were dead." "Not yet, but someone's trying hard to make it happen." "What do you need?" "Information. About Dmitry Volkov, where he's operating, who he's working with, what his next move is." Another pause. Longer this time. "That's a tall order, Kane. The Volkovs have been quiet. Too quiet. They've been planning, with help from inside my organization." Victor's voice hardened. "I need to know everything, and I need it fast. This is going to cost you. Name your price. The docks. The shipping contracts you took from me in 2018. I want them back." Victor thought about the docks, about the millions of dollars in revenue they generated, about the strategic importance of controlling the flow of goods into Chicago. It was a steep price, but he was out of options. "Done. Get me the information by tonight, and they're yours. I'll call you back in 6 hours." The line went dead. Victor pocketed the phone and turned back to Lily. "Who was that?" she asked. "Tommy Marconi. He runs the outfit's operations on the south side. We've been rivals for years, but he's old school. He keeps his word. And you trust him?" "More than I trust anyone else right now." Victor sat down across from her. "While we wait, I need you to tell me everything your sister told you. Every detail, no matter how small." Lily closed her eyes, and Victor watched her face as she pulled up the memories. "She said the men were meeting in the private room at the Velvet Room, the one you use for business meetings. She said they didn't know she was there, that she was supposed to be off that night, but came in to cover for another bartender." "When was this?" 3 weeks ago. October 15th. Victor's mind raced. October 15th. He'd been at the Velvet Room that night, meeting with a supplier from Detroit, but he'd left early, around 10. If Claire had been working late, if she'd heard something after he left, what else? She said the Russian, Dmitry, I guess, was angry. He said you'd killed his brother and taken everything from him. He said he was going to do the same to you. Take everything, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. And the American, the one he called brother? Lily's eyes opened, and Victor saw the fear there. She didn't hear a name, but she said he had a scar, above his left eyebrow. The world stopped. Victor felt the words like a physical blow, like someone had reached into his chest and torn out his heart. A scar above the left eyebrow, from the Volkov War in 2010, from the fight that had nearly killed him. "Marco." "No," Victor said, but the word came out weak. "She's wrong. She has to be wrong." "Victor, Marco is loyal. He's been with me for 15 years. He saved my life a dozen times. He wouldn't—" Victor's voice broke. He couldn't. But even as he said it, he was remembering. The strange behavior, the missing shipment, the way Marco had reached for his gun at the gala, the way he'd looked at Victor last night, with hurt and anger and something else, something that might have been guilt. "I'm sorry," Lily said softly. Victor stood and walked to the window, his hands shaking. He thought about Marco, about the kid from the south side who'd joined his crew at 19, who'd fought beside him in the gang wars, who'd been his best man at his wedding, before his wife had left him because she couldn't live with what he was. Marco, who'd called him brother. Marco, who'd betrayed him. Why? The question came out raw. Why would he do this? "I don't know. But your sister said he was working with Dmitry, that they were planning to kill you and take over your empire." Victor thought about the past 2 years, about the times Marco had been alone with Elena, the meetings they'd had without him, the decisions Marco had made that Victor had trusted without question. How long had it been going on? How long had his best friend been planning his death? "I need to talk to him," Victor said. "That's insane. He'll kill you." "Maybe, but I need to hear it from him. I need to know why." Lily stood, wincing at the pain. "Then I'm coming with you." "No, you're staying here where it's safe." "Safe?" Lily's laugh was harsh. "Nowhere is safe. Not for me, not for you. Your sister knows I exist. Her people will be looking for me. The only way I survive this is if we end it. Together." Victor looked at her, at this girl who'd lost everything and was still standing, who'd taken a bullet for him and was now offering to walk back into the fire. "You're going to get yourself killed," he said. "Probably, but at least I'll die fighting." Lily met his eyes. My sister didn't get that choice. They tortured her, murdered her, and threw her away like garbage. I'm not going to let that be for nothing. Victor thought about Claire Brennan, about the bartender who'd tried to warn him and paid with her life, about all the people who'd died in the shadows of his empire, while he'd told himself it was necessary, that it was just business. Maybe it was time to make it personal. Okay, he said, but we do this my way. We plan, we prepare, and we don't take unnecessary risks. Agreed. Victor's phone buzzed. He checked it and saw a text from an unknown number. Grant Park, the Buckingham Fountain. 1 hour. Come alone. It was from Marco. Victor showed the text to Lily. He wants to meet. It's a trap. Probably. But it's also an opportunity. Victor checked his Glock, made sure he had a full magazine. He wants to talk. That means he's not sure. That means there might be a way to turn this around. Or it means he wants to finish what he started at the storage unit. Victor thought about that. Thought about walking into Grant Park, into the open, where a sniper could take him out from 100 yards away. Thought about facing Marco, about looking into the eyes of the man he'd called brother and seeing a stranger. I have to try, he said. Then I'm coming with you. Lily, I'm coming with you. Her voice was steel. You said we do this together. So we do it together. All the way to the end. Victor looked at her and saw the same determination he'd seen in the mirror every morning for 15 years. The same refusal to back down, to give up, to let the world win. Maybe that's why Claire had tried to warn him. Maybe she'd seen something in him worth saving. Or maybe she'd just been a good person in a world that ate good people alive. Okay, Victor said, but you stay back. You watch. And if anything goes wrong, you run. You don't try to help. You don't try to fight. You just run and don't look back. I'm not leaving you. You will if I tell you to. Because if we both die, then Claire died for nothing. And I won't let that happen. Lily stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but you better not die, Kane. Because I still need you to help me kill the people who murdered my sister. Victor almost smiled. Almost. Deal. They left the safe house an hour later, taking a cab to Grant Park. The November wind was brutal, coming off the lake like knives. The park was mostly empty, just a few joggers and tourists braving the cold. The Buckingham Fountain sat in the center, its waters still and silent in the winter. Victor had always liked this place. It reminded him that Chicago was more than violence and corruption, that there was beauty here, if you knew where to look. Marco was waiting by the fountain, his back to the water. He was alone, as far as Victor could see, but that didn't mean anything. Snipers could be anywhere. Stay here, Victor told Lily, positioning her behind a tree with a clear view. If I signal, you run. What's the signal? Me dying. Victor walked toward Marco, his hand near his gun but not on it. He watched his friend's face, looking for the truth, looking for the betrayal. You came, Marco said. You asked. I wasn't sure you would. After everything. After you tried to kill me, you mean? Marco's expression didn't change. I didn't try to kill you, Victor. I tried to save you. By working with the Volkovs? By helping Elena destroy everything I've built? By trying to stop you from destroying yourself? Marco's voice was tired. You've been spiraling for 2 years, Victor. Making reckless decisions. Trusting the wrong people. I tried to warn you. Tried to make you see. But you wouldn't listen. So you betrayed me. I tried to save you. Marco's control cracked. Elena came to me 2 years ago. She told me what she was planning. She wanted me to help her kill you. And I said no. I said I'd never betray you. That you were my brother. Victor felt something shift in his chest. But she showed me the evidence. The deals you'd made with the cartels. The people you'd killed. The lines you'd crossed. Marco's eyes were wet. You'd become everything we fought against, Victor. Everything we swore we'd never be. So you decided to kill me. No, I decided to stop you. To work with Elena to dismantle your empire piece by piece. To force you to step away before the feds came for you. Before you ended up dead or in prison. Marco's voice broke. I was trying to save your life, you stubborn bastard. Victor stared at his friend. At the man who'd stood beside him through 15 years of war and blood. And he saw the truth in Marco's eyes. He'd been trying to help. The storage unit, Victor said. The bomb. That was Elena. I didn't know about it until after. When I found out, I tried to stop it, but it was too late. Marco stepped closer. I swear to you, Victor, I never wanted you dead. I just wanted you out. I wanted you to have a chance at a real life, away from all this. Victor felt the anger draining out of him. replaced by something worse. Grief for the friendship they'd had, for the trust they'd lost, for the empire that was crumbling around them. Dmitry Volkov, he said. Where is he? I don't know. Elena's been handling that side of things. I've been trying to protect you, to keep you alive long enough to... The shot came from nowhere, a crack that echoed across the park. Marco's head snapped back and he fell, blood spreading across the concrete. Victor dove for cover, his gun out, scanning for the shooter. He saw movement on a rooftop 200 yards away, saw the glint of a scope. "Lily, run!" he shouted. But Lily wasn't running. She was moving toward him, her face pale but determined. Another shot. This one hit the fountain, spraying water and stone. Victor grabbed Lily and pulled her behind the fountain's base. "I told you to run, and I told you I wasn't leaving you." Victor looked at Marco's body, at the blood pooling beneath his friend's head, at the man who'd tried to save him and died for it. "We need to move," he said. Now. They ran, keeping low, using the fountain as cover. More shots followed them, but they were moving fast, zigzagging, making themselves hard targets. Victor's mind was racing. The shooter was professional, military-grade weapon, perfect position, clean shots. This wasn't some street thug. This was Elena's endgame. They made it to the trees, to the cover of the park's edge. Victor looked back and saw figures moving toward the fountain. 4, maybe 5, all armed. "This way," he said, pulling Lily deeper into the park. They ran through the trees, through the cold November morning, while behind them, Chicago's most feared crime lord became just another man running for his life. And somewhere in the city, Elena Kane smiled and made another call. The king was wounded. Now it was time to finish him. The abandoned warehouse on the south side had been a Kane family property for 30 years, back when Victor's father had run numbers and protection rackets out of Canaryville. Now, it was just another forgotten building in a neighborhood that time had left behind. Its windows broken, its walls covered in graffiti. It was perfect. Victor and Lily had made it here by stealing a car and driving through alleys, avoiding main streets and security cameras. Victor's phone was off, smashed and thrown in a dumpster. They were ghosts now, invisible to the network Elena controlled, but they wouldn't stay invisible for long. Inside the warehouse, Victor found what he was looking for, a weapons cache his father had hidden decades ago. The guns were old but functional. 2 Berettas, a shotgun, and enough ammunition to start a small war, which was exactly what Victor was planning. "Tell me you have a plan," Lily said, watching him check the weapons. "I have a plan. A good plan. A plan." Victor loaded the Berettas and handed one to Lily. "You know how to use this? Point and shoot, right?" "More or less." Victor showed her the safety, the proper grip, the stance. "But try not to shoot unless you have to. These things are loud, and loud attracts attention." Lily took the gun, and Victor saw her hands were steady. Steadier than his, maybe. The girl had steel in her spine. "So what's the plan?" she asked. Victor pulled out a map of Chicago and spread it on a crate. "Elena and Dmitry are working together, but they're not equals. Elena wants to legitimize the Kane Empire. Dmitry wants revenge. Those goals are compatible now, but they won't be forever. So we drive a wedge between them." "Exactly. We make Dmitry think Elena is betraying him, and we make Elena think Dmitry is going to kill her." "How?" Victor pointed to a location on the map. "The Velvet Room. This is where it started, where Claire heard them planning. It's neutral ground, a place they both use. And tonight there's a private event, high-level meeting between Elena's people and Dmitry's crew. You want to crash it." "I want to burn it down." Victor's voice was cold. "I want to walk in there and make them understand that I'm not dead yet, that I'm still the most dangerous man in Chicago. And then I want to watch them tear each other apart." Lily studied the map. "That's insane. You'll be outnumbered 20-1, 30-1 probably, but I won't be alone. I'm not exactly an army, Kane. No, but Tommy Marconi is." Victor pulled out another burner phone and dialed. Marconi answered on the first ring. "I've got your information," Marconi said. "Dmitry Volkov has been operating out of a warehouse in back of the yards. He's got about 15 men, all ex-military, and he's planning something big for tonight." "The Velvet Room," Victor said. "How do you know?" "Because that's where I'm going to be, and I need your help." Marconi was quiet for a moment. "You're asking me to go to war with the Volkovs and the Kanes. That's a big ask, Victor. I'm asking you to help me end this. Tonight, one way or another." Victor's voice hardened. You get the docks either way. But if you help me, you also get Elena's territory. All of it. Everything north of Roosevelt Road. Another pause. You're offering me half of Chicago. I'm offering you a future. Because if Elena and Dimitri win, they'll come for you next. They'll come for everyone who ever worked with me. And they won't stop until they control everything. And if you win, then I disappear. I take what's left of my money and I leave Chicago. The empire is yours. Marconi laughed, a harsh sound. You'd really walk away? After 15 years? Victor looked at Lily, at the girl who'd lost her sister because of his world, at the blood and betrayal that had brought them here, at the bodies piled up in his wake. Yeah, he said. I'd walk away. Okay, I'm in. But I want it in writing. A contract, signed and witnessed. You'll have it. Meet me at the Velvet Room at midnight. Bring everyone you've got. This better work, Kane. It will, one way or another. Victor ended the call and turned to Lily. Now we wait. For what? For sunset. For darkness. For the moment when we either win or die trying. They spent the afternoon preparing. Victor cleaned the weapons, planned the approach, memorized the layout of the Velvet Room. Lily watched him work, and Victor could feel her questions, her doubts. You don't have to do this, he said finally. You've done enough. More than enough. You can walk away right now, and I'll make sure you're safe. Safe how? Your sister wants me dead. Dimitri wants me dead. The only way I'm safe is if they're gone. Or if I'm gone. Victor met her eyes. If I die tonight, Elena and Dimitri get what they want. They stop hunting you. You can disappear, start over somewhere else. Lily shook her head. That's not how this works. They'll tie up loose ends. I'm a loose end. She was right. Victor knew she was right, but he had to offer. Why did you do it? He asked. At the gala. Why did you take that bullet for me? Lily was quiet for a long moment. Because Claire believed in you. She said you were different from the others, that you had rules, that you protected people. And I thought maybe if I saved you, it would mean something, that her death wouldn't be for nothing. I'm not worth saving, Lily. I've done terrible things. Hurt people, killed people, built an empire on blood and fear. I know. Claire knew too. But she also said you were trying to be better, that you'd been changing, making different choices. Lily's eyes were bright. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe you're exactly what you seem to be. But I have to believe she saw something real. Because if she didn't, then what was the point of any of it? Victor thought about that. About the rules he'd made. The lines he'd tried not to cross. About the hospital wings he'd funded. And the neighborhoods he'd protected. About the empire he'd built that was supposed to be different, better, cleaner than what had come before. But blood was still blood. And the dead were still dead. I'm sorry about your sister, he said. I know, but sorry doesn't bring her back. Lily stood and checked her gun. So let's make sure the people who killed her pay for it. As the sun set over Chicago, Victor and Lily left the warehouse and drove toward Rush Street, toward the Velvet Room, toward the end of everything. The club was already busy when they arrived, the line stretching around the block, but Victor didn't use the front entrance. He used the service door in the alley, the one that led directly to the private rooms upstairs. The bouncer at the door recognized him and started to smile. Then he saw the gun in Victor's hand, and the smile died. Don't, Victor said quietly. Just walk away. Tell everyone you saw me. Tell them I'm here, but don't try to stop me. The bouncer looked at Victor, at the cold certainty in his eyes, and made the smart choice. He walked away. Victor and Lily moved through the service corridor, past the kitchens and storage rooms, toward the stairs that led to the private level. Victor could hear music thumping below, could feel the bass in his chest, the sound of his old life, the empire he'd built, the empire he was about to destroy. At the top of the stairs, they found 2 more guards. These didn't run. They reached for their guns, and Victor shot them both. Clean, quick, professional. They went down without a sound. Jesus, Lily whispered. Stay close, Victor said. They moved down the hallway toward the main private room, the one where Claire Brennan had heard the conspiracy that killed her. Victor could hear voices inside, could hear Elena's voice, clear and commanding. Need to move faster. Kane is still alive, and every hour he's out there is another hour he can plan, can regroup. He is nothing. That was Dimitri, his Russian accent thick. He is a dead man who doesn't know he's dead yet. By morning, this will be finished. You said that yesterday, and the day before, and he's still breathing. Because your people keep failing. The storage unit, the park. My people? Your sniper missed at the park. Your men let him escape from Pilsen. Victor smiled. They were already turning on each other, already doubting. All he had to do was push. He kicked open the door. The room froze. Elena sat at the head of the table, Dmitri to her right. Around them, a dozen men in suits, all armed, all staring at Victor like he was a ghost. "Hello, sister," Victor said. Elena recovered first. "Victor, I was wondering when you'd show up. Disappointed I'm not dead yet? More surprised than disappointed. You've always been hard to kill." Elena's smile was cold, but not impossible. The men around the table were reaching for their guns, but Victor raised his hand. "I wouldn't. I've got 20 men outside. Tommy Marconi and his crew. If I don't walk out of here in 5 minutes, they come in shooting, and nobody walks out alive." It was a bluff. Marconi wouldn't be here for another hour, but Elena didn't know that. "You're lying," Dmitri said. "Am I? Check the windows. Check the street. See for yourself." One of Dmitri's men moved to the window and looked out. Victor held his breath. If they called his bluff now, he was dead. "There are cars," the man said. "People. Could be Marconi's crew. Could be. Or could be random club-goers." But the doubt was there now. The uncertainty. "What do you want, Victor?" Elena asked. "I want to make a deal." "You're not in a position to make deals. Neither are you. Because here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell Dmitri about your real plan. About how you're planning to betray him once I'm dead. About how you've been talking to the feds, making a deal to give them the Volkovs in exchange for immunity." Elena's face went white. "That's a lie." "Is it? Ask yourself, Dmitri. Why would Elena want to partner with you? You're a liability. A Russian gangster with no connections, no legitimacy. She doesn't need you. She just needs you to help her kill me. And once I'm gone, she'll hand you over to the FBI and walk away clean." Dmitri was staring at Elena now, and Victor saw the doubt in his eyes, saw the old paranoia, the old hatred. "He's trying to divide us," Elena said quickly. "Don't listen to him." "Then prove it," Victor said. "Show him the documents. The ones you've been preparing for the federal prosecutor. The ones that detail every crime Dmitri's committed since he came to Chicago. There are no documents. They're in your office safe. Combination 152347. Our father's birthday." Victor smiled. "You really think I didn't know? You really think I haven't been watching you, Elena? I've known about your plan for months. I just wanted to see how far you'd go." It was another bluff. Victor had no idea if there were documents, but he knew his sister, knew she'd always have a backup plan, an exit strategy, and he knew Dmitri would believe it. "Check the safe," Dmitri said, his voice cold. "Dmitri, don't be stupid. Check the safe." One of Dmitri's men left the room. The silence that followed was suffocating. Victor kept his gun trained on Elena, kept his eyes on the men around the table. Lily stood beside him, her own gun steady. The man returned 5 minutes later with a folder. He handed it to Dmitri, who opened it and began to read. Victor watched his face change, watched the anger build. "You were going to betray me," Dmitri said softly. "It's not what it looks like. You were going to hand me to the FBI." Dmitri stood, his face flushed. "After everything I did for you, after I helped you kill your own brother. He's not my brother. He's a criminal who destroyed everything my father built. And you are any different?" Dmitri's laugh was harsh. "You are worse than him, Elena Kane. At least Victor is honest about what he is. But you pretend to be clean while your hands are covered in blood." The room exploded into chaos. Dmitri's men drew their guns. Elena's men drew theirs. And Victor grabbed Lily and dove for cover as the shooting started. Bullets tore through the room, shattering glass and splintering wood. Victor heard screams, heard bodies hitting the floor. He fired back, not aiming, just creating chaos. "We need to go," Lily shouted. Victor nodded and they ran, back toward the hallway, toward the stairs. Behind them, the private room had become a war zone. Elena's voice was screaming orders. Dmitri was shouting in Russian. And the sound of gunfire was deafening. They made it to the stairs and ran down, taking them 2 at a time. The club below was in chaos, people screaming and running for the exits. Victor and Lily pushed through the crowd, toward the alley door. They burst outside just as the first police sirens began to wail in the distance. Victor looked back at the Velvet Room, at the building that had been the heart of his empire, and watched it burn. Not literally, not yet, but it was burning all the same. Burning with betrayal and blood, and the end of everything he'd built. "Did we win?" Lily asked. Victor thought about that, about Elena and Dmitri tearing each other apart, about the empire crumbling, About Marco's body in Grant Park and Claire Brennan's grave. I don't know, he said, but we survived. And sometimes that's enough. They disappeared into the Chicago night, leaving the sirens and the screams behind. And somewhere in the darkness, Victor Kane began to plan his next move. Because the war wasn't over. Not yet, but it was close. So close he could taste it. 3 days later, Victor stood on the observation deck of the Willis Tower and watched Chicago wake up. The November sun was cold and distant, painting the city in shades of gray and gold. Below, the streets moved with their usual rhythm, oblivious to the war that had torn through the underworld. The news had been covering it non-stop. A shootout at the Velvet Room that left 8 dead and a dozen wounded. Elena Kane, prominent attorney, was in federal custody, facing charges of racketeering, conspiracy, and murder. Dmitry Volkov had disappeared, but the FBI had issued warrants for his arrest. The Kane empire was being dismantled piece by piece, seized by federal prosecutors, and divided among rival families. It was over. Victor had spent the past 3 days in hiding, watching the fallout from a distance. Tommy Marconi had kept his word, had shown up at the Velvet Room with his crew just minutes after the shooting started. He'd helped Victor and Lily escape, had provided them with new identities and enough cash to disappear. In return, Victor had signed over everything. The docks, the territories, the legitimate businesses. All of it. Marconi was the new king of Chicago, and Victor was just another ghost. "You're really going through with it," Lily said, joining him at the railing. She looked better now, the color back in her face, the wound healing. "You're really leaving." "I am." "Where will you go?" "West. Maybe California. Somewhere warm where nobody knows my name." Victor looked at her. "You should come with me." Lily shook her head. "I can't. I have things to do here. People to see. Claire's funeral." "Yeah. And after that?" She trailed off, staring at the city. "After that, I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to school. Maybe I'll travel. Maybe I'll just try to figure out who I am when I'm not running for my life." Victor understood that. He'd been running for 15 years, building and fighting and surviving. And now, for the first time, he had a chance to stop, to breathe, to figure out who Victor Kane was when he wasn't a crime lord. "I'm sorry," he said, "for everything. For your sister, for dragging you into this. You didn't drag me. I chose to be here." Lily turned to face him. "Claire chose to warn you. I chose to save you. Those were our choices, Victor. You don't get to take that away from us. Still, if I'd been smarter, more careful, then someone else would have died. That's how your world works, right? Someone always dies." Lily's voice was soft but firm. "But you're leaving that world now. You're choosing something different. That matters." Claire would have said it matters. Victor thought about that. About the bartender who'd tried to save him, and the sister who'd finished the job. About the empire he'd built, and the family he'd lost. About the blood on his hands, and the chance at redemption. "What will you tell people?" he asked. "About what happened. The truth, that my sister was murdered by criminals, that I helped bring them down, that justice was served." Lily smiled, sad and tired. "The rest is just details." Victor nodded. The official story was already set. Elena had been running a criminal conspiracy, had betrayed her brother, and had been caught in a shootout with Russian gangsters. Victor Kane had died in the chaos, his body lost in the confusion. The FBI was still looking for it, but they wouldn't find it, because Victor Kane was already gone. "There's money," Victor said, pulling out an envelope. "For you, for Claire's funeral, for school, for whatever you need. It's clean, untraceable." Lily took the envelope but didn't open it. "Thank you. It's not enough. It'll never be enough, but it's something." They stood in silence, watching the city breathe. Victor thought about all the moments that had led him here, all the choices and compromises. He thought about his father, who'd taught him to be strong. About Elena, who'd taught him that strength without honor was just tyranny. About Marco, who'd tried to save him and died for it. And he thought about Claire Brennan, a bartender who'd seen something worth saving in a man who'd built an empire on blood. "I should go," Victor said finally. "My flight leaves in 2 hours." "Where are you flying to?" "Denver. From there I'll drive. Keep moving until I find a place that feels right." "And then what?" "And then I'll figure out how to be someone else. Someone better." Victor offered his hand. "Thank you, Lily, for everything." Lily ignored the hand and hugged him instead, fierce and quick. "Don't waste it," she whispered. "Don't waste the chance she gave you. I won't. Victor left the observation deck and took the elevator down to the street level. He walked out into the cold Chicago morning. Just another face in the crowd. Nobody looked at him twice. Nobody recognized the man who'd ruled this city for 15 years. He was invisible. He was free. Victor caught a cab to O'Hare, watching the city roll past the windows. He saw the neighborhoods he'd controlled, the streets where he'd fought, the buildings where he'd made deals and ordered deaths. He saw his whole life laid out in concrete and steel, and he felt nothing. At the airport, he checked in under his new name, Michael Torres, businessman from Phoenix, and made it through security without incident. His new identity was solid, courtesy of Marconi's connections. Michael Torres had a credit history, a driver's license, even a LinkedIn profile. He was real in all the ways that mattered. Victor Kane was the ghost now. He found his gate and sat down to wait, watching travelers rush past. Families, businessmen, students, normal people living normal lives. He wondered what that felt like, to move through the world without constantly checking for threats, without calculating angles and exits. He was about to find out. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Victor looked up and saw an older woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. She was carrying a book and a cup of coffee, and she looked at him like he was just another traveler. Not a killer, not a crime lord, just a person. "No," Victor said. "It's all yours." The woman sat down and opened her book, and Victor felt something shift in his chest, something that might have been hope. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you for everything. Be safe. L. Lily," saying goodbye. Victor deleted the text and turned off the phone. No more messages. No more connections to the past. Just forward, into whatever came next. The gate agent called for boarding, and Victor stood with the other passengers. He handed over his ticket, walked down the jetway, and found his seat by the window. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Victor looked out at Chicago, one last time. The city that had made him, that had broken him, that had given him everything, and taken it all away. He thought about his father, buried in Graceland Cemetery, about Marco, whose body was probably in the lake by now, about Elena, sitting in a federal holding cell, waiting for trial, about Claire Brennan, who died trying to save a man she didn't know. And he thought about the words Lily had whispered in the ballroom, the words that had changed everything. Trust no one in this room. She'd been right. In the end, the only person Victor could trust was himself, and maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all anyone ever had. The plane lifted off, and Chicago fell away beneath him. Victor watched until the city was just a smudge on the horizon, and then he closed his eyes and let himself breathe. For the first time in 15 years, he had no empire to protect, no enemies to fight, no family to betray him. He had nothing but a new name and a chance to start over. It wasn't much, but it was more than he deserved. And as the plane carried him west, toward the mountains and the desert and whatever lay beyond, Victor Kane, no, Michael Torres, allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, Claire Brennan had been right about him. Maybe there was something worth saving after all. Epilogue. 6 months later, in a small town in Colorado, a man named Michael Torres opened a bookstore. It was a modest place, tucked between a coffee shop and a hardware store on Main Street. The shelves were filled with used books, the kind that had been loved and read and passed from hand to hand, the kind that told stories about people trying to be better than they were. Michael, he thought of himself as Michael now, not Victor, spent his days recommending books to customers, ordering inventory, and learning how to live a quiet life. He rented a small apartment above the store. He took walks in the mountains. He learned to cook. He was, by all accounts, boring, and he'd never been happier. Sometimes, late at night, he'd think about Chicago, about the empire he'd built and the people he'd lost, about Elena in prison and Dimitri still on the run, about Marco's betrayal and Claire Brennan's sacrifice. But mostly, he thought about Lily, about the girl who'd saved his life and asked for nothing in return except justice for her sister. He hoped she was okay, hoped she'd found peace, or at least something close to it. One day, a customer came into the store, a young woman with auburn hair and a familiar face. "Lily?" She smiled. "Hi, Michael. What are you doing here?" "I was in the area. Thought I'd stop by, see how you're doing." She looked around the store, at the books and the quiet. "This is nice. Really nice. It's different. Different is good." Lily picked up a book. Read the back cover. I'm in school now. University of Colorado. Studying social work. Figured I'd try to help people, you know? Make something good out of everything that happened. That's great, Lily. Really great. Yeah, it is. She put the book down and met his eyes. I wanted to thank you. For everything. For helping me get justice for Claire. For giving me a chance to start over. You did that yourself. Maybe. But you helped. Lily pulled out a photograph and handed it to him. I thought you might want this. It was a picture of Claire Brennan, smiling at the camera. She looked happy, alive, full of hope. Thank you, Michael said, his voice thick. She'd be glad you made it out, that you're doing something different. Lily headed for the door, then paused. Take care of yourself, Michael Torres. And don't forget, you're not Victor Kane anymore. You don't have to carry that weight. I won't forget. Lily left, and Michael stood in his bookstore, holding the photograph of the woman who'd saved his life. He put it on the shelf behind the counter, where he could see it every day, a reminder of who he'd been, and who he was trying to become. Outside, Colorado sunshine streamed through the windows, warm and bright, and Michael Torres, formerly Victor Kane, smiled and went back to work. The past was behind him. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in his life, he was okay with that. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story. And don't forget to leave a comment telling me what you thought. I love hearing from you. What part of this story resonated with you the most? Let me know below. Until next time, take care.